All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to podcast Three Grown-Ups. We are tonight two grown-ups because the other hosts, Bob Parliament and Vic Sternberg, are not with us, but I'm happy to say I have my former colleague, and I should say present colleague, who I worked with for many, many years, Ken Rosato, who is Mr. Fabulous in my eyes. And our guests tonight are Leilani Yizar and Manny Rawlings. Now, for some background information, both Manny and Leilani were Village of Town of Mamaroneck board. It's town. I get this wrong all the time.
No, it's the village of Mamaroneck.
Village, the friendly Village of Mamaroneck board trustees, and they were the first African American Village of Mamaroneck board trustees. Did I
Nope.
get again too? Oh my God, I'm gonna
Nope. I would say I was the first female, Black female trustee. But before us, with Sid Albert, he's related to Manny.
Yeah.
He was the first African American male trustee, and um, he was elected in 2010. So it took all those years to elect a Black elected official, and then in between that time, Manny and myself came along.
I would say in all three instances, it was kind of trial by fire, if I can speak on your behalf. And there were a lot of things that worked, a lot of things that didn't work, while both you and Manny were board trustees. Now, it needs to be noted that you are now out of office,
Yes, we are.
term is over, and you have opted to not, both of you have opted not to run again. So with that, I'm sure that there's a litany of reasons why you don't want to run again. So, Leilani, let's start with you. I know that you have a lot to say about your tenure in the Village of Mamaroneck. One of your accomplishments has been to advocate for affordable housing. I don't know if that's where you want to begin, but you can decide that.
So I guess I'll answer the question as to why I decided not to run again. But I was teeter-tottering for the betterment of what we're in 2024. For the betterment of 2023, I was teetering on not running again. And I kind of made the decision December 2023 that I definitely was not. Uh, and I decided not to run because I didn't feel that the Village of Mamaroneck deserved someone like me anymore. Not my time. Not my time, not my talents, not my compassion, not my advocacy. And I didn't feel that they deserved it anymore. So that's why I decided not to run.
And I'll ask this of both of you, and then Ken take the wheel. Uh, when you say that the Village of Mamaroneck didn't deserve your talents, is that based on the fact that previous board of trustee members worked less or didn't present the issues that both you and Manny were representing?
They definitely didn't, some people may have pressed a little bit, but didn't press enough. Some people possibly could have tried, but, did not do what was, in my eyes, all the way necessary, didn't completely see us as, not see us as a part of the community, but see us as having power in the community, because we could be a part of the community, but to have power, to be in existence, those are two different things. But I wouldn't say that people may or may not have tried. They possibly didn't, but we did struggle to be seen. And I guess while we were in office, be seen as in terms of the things that our community needs, and that could be Black and brown, that could be individuals on a lower income, and it's a little bit of everything. It's not just dealing with, Black people in a sense, but it's a variety of populations that we were advocating for. So, yeah, Manny, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think to answer the first question of why, when I decided I wasn't going to run, I really was the one holding out because I'm just very optimistic, and I just thought, sure, things are tough, and I knew it never was going to be easy. I know before I decided to run, and even when I was running, Tom Murphy, who kind of got me into this space, said there's going to be days where you really love it and you feel really fulfilled, and there's going to be days where you're like, why did I do this? Why do I want to continue doing this? And I think it got to the point where it's like there's too many days of why am I continuing to do this? And I just knew I needed to take a step back and realize this wasn't the right moment for me to kind of be in this space. I just think for me, I didn't really decide until January, February of 2024 to decide like I'm not going to run. I think this wasn't a space where I knew I could really advocate. And I just think a lot of people don't understand when you're on a board or you serve and you're in an elected position, you really are bound like and like cuffed to only allowed to do specific things. I just think I could advocate and push many more things forward if I was not in that space. And I just think that I come to
Mhm.
that realization like now, like being off the board and throughout this year is like when I can get off the board, I feel like I can really push and advocate in many different avenues and different spaces, opposed to being on the board and you're kind of locked into kind of only specific things that you can really push for. And I think that's why so many people believe like, oh, they only care about affordable housing and they don't care about this piece. And while I do disagree with that, I think we tackled many issues, and I think we were able to spread, and like Leilani really spearheaded and led the traffic committee, and we got more things done for traffic than I can remember. And I've only been on Mamaroneck for all my life, so I just think it's very challenging to kind of advocate in multiple areas. I think we did a really good job at doing that, but I think you're also really bound to how much you really can push and what you really can get done because government is very bureaucratic and there's too many steps and things move way too slowly to kind of move forward. So I just thought me leaving that space and being able to advocate and work with different nonprofit groups or work with different political leaders and their upper electeds, I think that was, to me, that was my next step of this is how I think I can advocate and be able to move forward certain initiatives. I think that's helping lead that fight and lead that battle because it's a little bit challenging when you're inside, I guess, the bubble, and you're inside the team of, the political world to kind of push those things forward.
To your point, Manny, even when and you talked about the things that we were bound to,
Mhm.
we were also inadvertently bound to the narratives that people were
Mhm.
saying about us.
Yep.
And because those certain voices were much louder than the individuals who were either paying attention or mostly not paying attention,
Mhm.
those narratives about us was so glaringly loud.
Yeah.
And it's like, what would be the point of fighting in this space?
Yeah.
Those narratives at this moment. I was like, that's just taking away way too much of my energy
Mhm.
to battle that on top of actually doing my job.
Let's
Yeah. And I think
uh,
that's such, oh, sorry, you can
I
go.
just want to, because Ken's covered a lot more politics than I have, so I yield to him.
Well, yeah, if I could just jump in for a second, I want to commend you both because it's obvious there is an enormous amount of passion. And I don't know if just looking as an outsider who's never met you, and by the way, I'm from New Rochelle originally. I know Mamaroneck very well. So I was raised going to Mamaroneck and having friends from there. And one thing I remember from when I was a little kid that my mother used to say, because I think my dad tried to open a business once in Mamaroneck. I want to say 55 years ago. Okay. You weren't even in existence or even a thought. And I remember the idea was if you were not, this is going back now, if you were not from the locals, quote unquote, who, in other words, from the town, you want to start a business, even though we were from New Rochelle, a town or two away, goodbye. Ain't gonna happen. You got help from nobody. You were treated like garbage, like you did not exist. So there is definitely, I don't know how it is today, and I'm only telling you the word from my family, not from my
Mhm.
personal experience. But I found that interesting. And now hearing the passion with which you speak and the wall that you found you were hitting, it all brought back the memories of what I was told for 50 years ago. So is it that it's like you're trying to move a mountain when you're in that position, and You just, no matter what you do, you're just being confronted by people who just don't want to hear it, don't want to see it. Is that basically what you encountered?
I'd like to, if you don't mind, I want to go
Go
first.
ahead, Manny. Go ahead.
Please.
I just think that's exactly that's obviously shifted in Mamaroneck, but I think a lot of it is this kind of closed door approach of no outsiders, nobody can come in, you can't do this, and you have to kind of be selected to be in these positions. I know when we decided to run, we went for the Democratic committee's kind of endorsement. I mean, I wasn't in chosen to endorse, Leilani was, but ultimately she declined it because she was running with Lou and I. But it's just that's how Mamaroneck operate. That's how it's always kind of operated. They're good. They have a closed door committee. They hand select who they want to be in power. Those people get in power, and they kind of follow those rules of getting certain things through. I know that's how our for example, our building department used to work. It's kind of like you want a permit, you got to know the right person in the building department. That's going to move your thing forward. That's going to be able to move pieces forward. And I think now it's kind of shifted to this, people like to say NIMBYism of not in my backyard. And I just think that's what we have a lot of. Like we were really advocating for affordable housing. And sure, I believe some people, the loudest voices were saying, oh, we're not NIMBYs. We just don't think it makes sense for all of these reasons. But then they also, if you really look at and you really listen to what they're saying, they also contradicted a lot of what they were communicating.
A lot.
So a lot of what they would say is like, we don't want affordable housing, and then it shifted to like, okay, we do need it. It is an issue, but we don't want, this many units. But then they will go on the other side and say, okay, great. And we heard that we ended up picking a preferred developer that was a lower amount of units, but they said like, oh no, you can't do that. That's too many. And, but then they'll go and advocate for a much larger project, which is or will triple the amount of size. And it just didn't make sense. It just further proves that they didn't want anybody to come into the community. And I think a lot of the voices that we heard, come and advocate and say that you don't need affordable housing or didn't understand the issue were people who were newer residents. They were here, they would say, oh, I've been here for 5 years. I've only been here for 10 years. And it just was confusing of how you can come into our community, but then the door gets shut behind you and nobody else can come in. And they
But
just had that belief that because they worked for it and they were, privileged enough to kind of work hard and get here. And that's great. I commend them. I do believe to work hard. And, when you work hard, you can join and enter different communities, but not everybody has those same set of circumstances to kind of get that opportunity to come here. That's why I was a firm advocate that it's important that anybody should be able to come and join our community for the school district, for the diversity that we like to claim that we have in our community. Anybody at all walks of life, all income levels, they should be afforded the opportunity to come here. It shouldn't just be who can work really hard and, make the most money kind of to be able to join our community. If that's the case, then a majority of people across the country, then where are those people going to go? We're just going to shut out everybody because they're not able to make enough income. I just think that's a very interesting way to kind of live and kind of build and have a sense of community.
So in a sense, these things are like gatekeepers, right? They're the ones who are making the rules, these not even these made up rules in their head or made up rules that they deem is necessary to keep people from accessing things, right? So, and Manny, you said that there were people like these are people who are just entering the community
Yeah.
at 5-10 years. But what you started to see, and you could see it play out if you're from the village of Mamaroneck, if you're from the community, you know who the players are. And it wasn't just the newer folks, people who've been here for 5, 10, 15 years. These are people who they're the 5, 10, 15 on top of the long-standing residents.
Mhm.
So then when they started coming together, it then became a like, what is it that you really complaining about? What is it that you really want? And my conclusion was like, you just don't want any person that looks like me to have a voice, any person that looks like me to have any type of power. And then you start reconstructuring, sorry, who these people are, meaning myself, Manny, including Lou,
Mhm.
what we're truly about. And what we've always stood on was that we're here to improve our community, to move it forward. The people who were in these spaces, were, not saying they didn't move it forward, but there has been a lot of stagnation, I would say, in the last 7 years. A
Yeah.
lot of stagnation.
Paralysis of like doing anything
Anything.
to move anything for the community forward. And I just think people like to point like, well, you did nothing for flooding. And it's like, you're right. Nobody did anything for flooding for the past 40 years. But I can rattle off 1 to 5 different things that we did as a board for flooding. We got inside and cleaned the rivers for the first time in probably more than a decade. We funded a flood mitigation line, which is a line that hasn't been funded, same thing, for more than a decade. And I know people will, I really hear it. I was affected by flooding. Like, I know Leilani was affected by flooding. I know what that feeling is like. And I just think, it's, yes, while it is challenging, and I know we all are looking for that Army Corps plan and we want them to come and have a shovel in the ground. And that's something that's out of our control. But I know when it came in terms of us trying to do something for flood mitigation, we proposed and did anything and everything that we could within our power as a village board. We always advocated for that. And as we got towards the end of our term, I know Leilani and I were big advocates of saying, great, we have a not a capital fund. I'm sorry, I can't think of the term. We have
Budget.
we have a
A
good reserve
budget.
fund, and we
A
were
reserve fund.
advocating and saying, great, you're right. I hear the residents. They want us to spend money. They want us to go and pick a project, do a project. We both were saying, yeah, let's do it. We have a decent sized reserve fund. It's not, we add to it every single budget cycle. What is the point of having the reserve and if we're never going to pull any money out of it? It doesn't make sense to me. We have millions of dollars in reserve. I think our reserve was $14 million. I think we only need to have like 30% of that, of our entire budget, in the reserve. So we could have spent millions of dollars doing a project or funding a study. And you know what? And we didn't. We didn't have the rest of the support to kind of go and push that forward. I know another thing I wanted to do was saying, great, let's say Army Corps does come, or we want to do flood projects. We need to start setting aside money in our budget, just like we do for capital projects, just like we do for a reserve fund, to put money away for flood mitigation. I heard that, and I kept proposing. I said it up until the last meeting. We need to be able to do this because that stuff's going to cost money. And if we were to get Army Corps, and let's say it's done in 2 years, which is impossible. I don't think that's not even feasible. Who's going to pay to maintain that? That's going to balloon the budget. Where are they going to get the money to maintain a $160 million project? The village budget doesn't have those items.
But is it fair to say that the most vocal opponents come from the upper middle and upper class? Because a lot of these issues, such as particularly flood mitigation, don't impact the better areas of America. They
No.
the poor section of America, which is formerly known as the Flats, but now now it's called Washingtonville. But back in the day, it was called the Flats, and this was where the poor Italians and the poor African Americans lived for decades. And again, you have to tell you would know it better. You have a better perspective than a lot of people do. That it appeared again as though the most vocal opponents did not come from that area of impact.
No, there was a little bit of everybody. This was a equal people were it was an equal opportunist of people who were coming out opposing anything that we kind of did, or
Yeah.
who tried to destroy our character, who tried to just, I mean, it's not even try, they did what they did.
Yeah,
They made our whole term, they made our entire term miserable because of the fact that they didn't want us in office. And I think I can't even pinpoint as to what was the real reason, whether it could be if they were hanging up on on affordable housing, or the fact that when we ran, we had the support of the then mayor, Tom Murphy. I mean, there was some people who wanted to say like it was racism, and I was like, this is not even, I don't even think it is. A lot of it
I
is
didn't see like that.
it's rooted in systemic racism, it's rooted in systemic oppression. But what it is it's really about power, which is why we have racism. Everything is about power. And if you are taking away their power, this is what you get. You get people coming to meetings, skipping up to the damn podium, and threatening your job, threatening, saying that you're going to be
Sued, investigated,
you're
any
going
of
to
these,
be
they tried
investigated,
everything.
or you threatening. Like I remember like it was yesterday. It started right after the Palestine and Israel conflict, when they were just coming up to the podium, like saying that I'm anti-Semitic based upon a post, a post that was made with the organization that I was a part of, but I didn't even write the post. And then with that became a slew of emails from, from people in the Jewish community telling me that they're going to cancel me. I even had conversations with other elected officials above me saying they to cancel me. I'm like, for what? So there was campaign after campaign after campaign to destroy my character.
Mhm.
And it even started way before we became elected.
Can I jump in and ask how much of this
Yeah.
do you think has to do with the advent of the power of social media, where you get one or two very vociferous people who rally the troops, or who may
Keyboard
only have
warriors.
right. They may only have 5 or 10 people, but yet they can make it look like they have 50,000. I mean, so much of that, because look, having been on the air in media, I can't tell you how many times I'll read a story right down the line the way an executive producer approved it. I'm just the conduit. I'm the messenger. That's it.
Mhm.
It wasn't my concept. I'm just the news anchor reading it. And I can't tell you how many times on Facebook I would get 5,000 people saying you're a leftist and 5,000 people saying you're a right-wing Nazi. And I'm like, how can I be a leftist and a right-wing Nazi at the same time? Yet it was the
Mhm.
same angry warriors on both sides coming to attack. And I think they foamed at the mouth so much because somebody pushed them on social media and got them agitated. And I
And
was just wondering how much of that is what may have provoked these people to treat you like, because look, whether people agreed with you or not in what you want to do, there's no reason for the kind of nasty, vitriolic, the way it sounds. I could see the passion. I could feel, and again, I don't know. I still haven't even got to the detail to know whether I personally agree or not. It's the way people attack you that I don't like. It's like you could totally disagree with this person, Leilani. You were a public servant. You gave your time because you loved your community, and you don't deserve to be disrespected no matter what. Somebody disagrees, it's
that's
America.
fine, right?
It's cool. Don't disrespect and threaten to get. I was canceled personally. I know what it is and it sucks.
Huh.
And people do that because again, they're rallied. They think they're emboldened by this mass of people. They don't do it if
Right.
they think they're alone. They think they have this mass of people behind them. So number one, I think it's horrible that both of you encountered that. It's sad because there are very few people who are willing to come forward and volunteer their time, even whether I don't know if you get a stipend or not, but it's not worth this kind of stress. And to get attacked for just doing the job that people voted you in to do. And that sucks because then good, talented, smart people who are out there won't come forward now because who wants this nightmare?
And
And
yeah,
go
you can
ahead,
go.
Manny.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I think a lot of it, I'm not really on social media. It's like I didn't follow, but like, obviously I know people and they'll be like, oh, did you see this post? I'm like, no. And then people are sending me comments or sending me what the post looks like. I was like, I just knew to stay off of it because I know in this day and age, and when it comes to politics, everything's in the media, everything's all social media. It's this gamesmanship mentality of it's us versus them, or it's my side or your side. And I just think that's such a negative way to do it. So I was like, I don't want to be a part of the social media kind of post. I didn't make any posting, but I know a lot of it stemmed there where, it's one post like, oh, do you see what they're doing? And then it's like a slew of hundreds of comments saying, oh, this is what's happening, and so on and so forth. I know, and I feel like we both were under a lot of attack on social media. Like I remember I was the liaison to the Parks and Rec committee. I advocated for for my committee, and they thought it was a good idea to have a park, our second largest park, Florence Park, kind of renovated and redone. It was cost a lot of money, but it was a park that was unsafe, where trees were ripping up the basketball court, they're ripping up the walking path, ripping up the playground. It's unsafe. I'd rather us revitalize and rebuild that entire park. So one, our children can play on it. It can be a little safer. It's also a liability because say a kid trips and falls on a root that's ripping up a playground, that's a lawsuit right there. So I really pushed for that. And part of that was having some trees removed that would be replanted. We always replant anytime we cut down trees anywhere throughout the village, or at least we try to if it makes sense. So I know part of that, like I know when we did that and that work began, it's just like I got the blame. Oh my gosh, how could you approve this? Look at the trees, they're gone. I can't believe he's cutting down all the trees. It's like I personally didn't cut down any trees. I approved for a park to be redone, and I knew in order to benefit the community, especially the Florence Park area, that will be a huge thing. I remember getting a slew of emails saying, how could you do this? This doesn't make any sense. Why did you do this? And I just remember, but then once the park was done, the amount of emails that I got from some parents saying, my kids love playing on it. It's a beautiful thing. I'm so happy. It feels so much safer. And like, that's the piece that doesn't get seen, because those people are terrified to come to our meetings and to advocate and say that stuff, because they
Mhm.
see how negative it is in the space to come there and sit there and be a part of that conversation. So the social media played a large part of it, because that was a rallying point for a lot of people. And we even saw it, people don't know about this, and I know it'll come out at some point. When we first were hearing from the developers for the affordable housing kind of pitches or their proposals, from the request for proposals, we had a public meeting scheduled in January of this year. It was supposed to like have both developers come. They were going to present their things, and there was an organized plot to make sure those meetings were not held. It was
I
organized.
call it a mini insurrection, because
And
that's
people,
exactly what
yeah,
it looked like.
and that's what it looked like. I remember arriving there and it's being like, "What's going on?" And then, and like, there, it's a long line. People were waiting. Some people were inside. There were people in the hallways. Like, it's a capacity thing. We didn't have a lot. I know Lou worked really hard to have an overflow room set up where they can contribute, ask questions, watch it. We got that set up. And sure, could we have planned it a little better? I absolutely 100% agree. But I think it was an organized plan, and people were told, go there and make sure the meeting does not happen. Make sure it's disrupted. Make sure they cancel the meeting, and make sure it does not happen. And I think nobody
And the
knows.
mayor was in on it, because
And I
it was
think
on social media that she knew about, that she made comments, and the mayor was in on stopping that meeting.
You talking about
I just,
the new mayor,
The current mayor, yes,
Torres?
Mayor Torres.
Yeah, Mayor Torres. So you're saying that she was part of the group that did not want the meeting held, is that correct?
Yes.
Let me ask you this, on the topic of affordable housing.
Mhm.
Mamaroneck is now roughly, I think it's 25% Hispanic.
I think it is
it's
high.
probably around that. It's high. It's probably in that range.
So the number is, the last statistic I read, it was almost pushing 30%, which is a sizable population.
Mhm.
Now, given the fact that a lot of those people are not on the upper tier of the middle class, they are going to need housing. And since that population is not shrinking, then how is the Village of Mamaroneck going to deal with affordable housing for people who can't afford this $4,000, $5,000 a month rent? Because
Well,
eventually it seems that it's
that's
going to be the perfect storm here.
That's
well,
the
that's the point.
billion-dollar question.
But that's what they don't want. They don't want anybody to enter the community. So like, it's this closed door club of, it's either you're here because your family's been here for generations, or you're here because you were afforded the kind of, you worked hard and you made a lot of money, you could afford to be here. That's it. They don't want anybody else to kind of come and join our community. It's shut down. They don't want anybody to join. That's why we got so much pushback for affordable housing. We
And
picked a location that's in the highest and driest place in our community to put an affordable housing building, and people said no. We didn't say let's cram it in the flood zone and make sure and increase flooding there. We said let's put it in a high and dry place that would actually help flooding slightly, because right now it's an empty, dilapidated parking lot. And we said let's put it there. Let's revitalize the lot. Let's put affordable housing there. It's a win for the community. It'll be a win for the community. But the community was so against adding something. They thought, if we do this, then we're not doing anything for flooding, which couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, this would, help mitigate some flooding, because it'll be able to hold more water. But I just think also it would open up the doors to kind of, one, be better collaborators and partners, because I know later on, we found out we got a preference through HCR, which is the Home and the Community Renewals piece for the state. And I know we got a preference to get 50% of those units kind of to be for Village of Mamaroneck residents who were impacted from Hurricane Ida. Huge benefit for the community, that we will get at least 31 families or 31 people out of the flood zone into a high and dry, safe building, where then if the landlords or homeowners in the flood zone wanted to sell their property, because that's another program, there's a buyout program through HCR as well. They could sell their property, and then you know what the village could do? We can knock those buildings down, we can open up the space there, we can allow the floodwater to do it. But people they didn't see that big picture. They thought, oh, if we just do affordable housing, that means we don't care about flooding. But they don't understand all the prongs that are in there that need to be tackled.
And some people just didn't want to understand, because also, if you take some of these individuals out of these community in these areas, these low-lying areas in the flats, who are paying a lot of money just to rent,
Mhm.
right? You're taking away somebody's money.
Mhm.
So why would they even want to fix that problem? Because
Mhm.
some people are okay with living in allowing these people to live in subpar spaces because you get money out of it.
So, you know,
If,
it kind of
go
begs,
ahead. Yeah.
it kind of begs the question, because it's not as though they're going to eliminate poor people. I mean, there are families that are going to bring relatives in. There is going to be overcrowded housing, as has happened all across urban centers in America.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to get squeezed more and more into small spaces. And it's going to cause social problems. It's going to cause health problems. It's going to cause housing problems. And I don't see how this is going to suddenly disappear unless they remedy it somehow.
Because they don't think on that level, right? They don't think on the level of health disparities. They don't think of on the level of how the social determinants of how we live affects how we think and how affects the family dynamics. They don't have to think on that level, because when you think about like the people who are in the top tier of affordability, you have your CEOs. These are not people working in social services. These are not people who working in mental health. These are not people who working with individuals with addictions. These are sometimes people who don't have to think about these problems, these challenges that, like, even for myself, without this space, I advocate for.
Mhm.
So they're not on that level of thinking every single day. So when we came in, we were bringing those topics up. Think about it on this lens rather than just this. Think about how it's going to impact us long term. The data is there. We had people come in and explain this information, but when you are closed-minded and you are only thinking about yourself rather than the totality of our community, not just present day, but our future. And half the time, it's not even just these individuals that we're trying to help now, it's individuals that we're trying to help later on, because their kids, the ones who are hell bent on not even having this, their kids are going to be affected. And
There, right
that's
there,
where,
Leilani. If I may jump in,
go
that's,
ahead.
you just nailed it right there. What you just said. I think a lot of the people forget, like I've heard upper middle class parents say, well, Joni just got married, but they're looking for a place to live right now, and it's so expensive. And they're gonna have
Mhm.
to move 37 miles away. So it doesn't, like, they don't think about it because they own a home that they're paying a mortgage on because they bought the home 28 years ago or 35 years ago, whatever. And so that mortgage is, I mean, the value of the home 30 years ago was what it was. Today, those individuals probably couldn't afford to buy their own home because it would be so expensive. And
And
they
they
forget that, right? And they forget that their own kids can't even live in that community. Unless they live in
Yep.
the parents' basement, they're not going to be able to afford
And
something.
there are people in our community, the same ones, opposing this, who still are struggling to even pay their mortgage because taxes are rising, cost of
Mhm.
living is rising, and they're all complaining. But I'm like, we're not even just looking for affordable housing for like when people are renting. But did anybody even pay attention to when your grandpa was selling their house? You sold your house for a lot of money that allowed somebody else to come in and raise up all the prices of the houses. We're not even talking about that. So why don't you blame your grandfather instead of blaming somebody like me? We
And
all have a
that
part
house
to
was paid off.
play,
The house was paid off 60 years ago, and they
right?
bought it for $15,000, and they just sold it for 990. Grandpa made 970 or $980,000, whatever. And in the process, you're right. It takes all the property values, and on the one side, it looks, oh, wow, look at the property
Right.
values in Mamaroneck. But on the other side, it makes it not only unaffordable and unattainable, but like ridiculously unaffordable and unattainable to the rest of the world.
And there's a lot of factors, yet and still, our little affordable housing building that we wanted to build was the preempt to all the problems that Mamaroneck is going to have in the future. I said,
Can I ask also, because I know I've been a New Jersey resident for decades now, and I know that the rules here, I don't know if they apply nationally or if it's just a New Jersey thing. In New Jersey, number one, if you accepted federal dollars from HUD over the years for urban renewal, for the downtown, now you were subject to the rules of lower income and affordable housing. And I think a lot of communities, when they took that federal money, they didn't realize that, oh, now we don't have a say. Now it becomes a federal thing. But number two, in New Jersey, there's an option. For communities, they don't have to do lower or affordable income housing. They could also do housing for veterans. And I don't know if that's one of the options that's afforded, if that's just a New Jersey thing or if that's nationwide. What is the case there in Mamaroneck?
I think,
Hmm.
I'm not sure, Manny, if you know this
No,
answer.
I'm not 100% sure. I know the way it works with HUD and there's some of those certain federal programs. It kind of works like that in New York, because I know that that's like, I know when when the developers are coming to us and explaining their financing, like they knew they were gonna have to go to HUD to get some of it, and essentially it's through the developer. So I know they're kind of locked into saying, great, if we're gonna give you money, that means this needs to be affordable for 50 years, or like they would have to set how long the term would be for affordability. And I think the county then like also get to say, but then I think also the village or the municipality get to say, and I know like our goals, like this needs to be affordable for at least 100 years. Like you put it a lot, you want it to be forever. And I think most developers go in and do that and stick to it. And I think that's a problem America also has is when a lot of those people were going and doing that and building affordable housing. I know in one of our presentations from our ex-planner, Greg Cutler, you could see the numbers. Like you can tell when there's a big spike, it's like those people are all getting money from HUD, and they're saying, great, we're going to keep these buildings affordable for 50 years. As soon as those dropped off, those became market rate units, and all the units disappeared. So you can see the
Right.
data is there to show exactly how that happened, specifically in the village of, we had hundreds, now we probably have about 30 or maybe 20 to 30 units in the village of Mamaroneck that are still regulated as all affordable. And that's due to one, having a great, one having a great municipal kind of partner with Washington Housing Alliance, who's been in the village for 40 plus years. And their mission is entirely to maintain affordable housing within the village. So I know they still maintain some units within the village of Mamaroneck, because like that's their mission. Their mission is to keep it all affordable, even if they don't have to. They're not looking to make a profit and to make money. But I just think that's very where all those other people who had that money, and when it rolled off, they're like, great, it rolled off. These are all market rate. Let's make money now. And I just think that's the issue that the village kind of has now. Like that's why we weren't, our goal for affordable housing with the building we proposed, or the proposal we had, was not, it wasn't going to solve the issue, but I think it's a step. We have to take steps. And I think I just am a firm believer of, if not now, when? And if not, like, if not me, then who? Who's going to be the ones to
Right.
advocate? We can't keep kicking this can down the road, because I also agree with you and Leilani said about, things are expensive. We have homeowners saying like it's too expensive to live here, and you have to think of their kids. Like I'm a young person, it's like it's very expensive to live in the village, and I'm very fortunate that I'm able to still be able to afford to live in the village. But I just think you have to also think, it's those people, those younger people, my generation, they're not going to be able to come back and live in their communities. They're gonna have to move, miles away to kind of go and find something affordable to live. And that's gonna make their commutes longer. I think they don't see the social kind of, negative things that go with it, of like one, living further away and having to commute and kind of just one, wasting more dollars to do that. They don't understand like that, how it trickles down to other struggles of food insecurity, housing insecurity, transportation insecurity. They don't understand all those different pieces have in play if you don't have a stable home to kind of go back to. And I just think people don't see like how important having a home is, that's affordable, where it's a place where you can go to and having a safe space, how that affects all those. If you don't have that, it affects every single other thing in your life.
Going back to, I think Leilani had made the point about the flooding in Washingtonville flats. It almost sounds like affordable housing is going to happen by default, because, and I think you had mentioned it also, Manny, about the connection between flooding and property destruction. I mean, there are specific areas in Mamaroneck that flood, that continue to flood and have flooded for the last 50 years. Now, from an engineer standpoint, there's only so much destruction, there's only so much soil erosion that can take place before you have structures that simply are not going to hold up. So there may be a time where those flood-prone areas will be uninhabitable. And then to attract a developer to come in, at least a developer to put in not luxury housing, but upper income housing, they're not gonna wanna invest there. So
No,
the only
And I
people
think you're,
that invest would be affordable housing.
and I think you're 100% right, because I think you're right. At a certain point, if they keep hitting flood after flood, those places aren't going to be inhabitable. I know in the last flood in Ida, the apartment building I lived in, I was out of my home for more than a month because I coded or classified by the building department that it was uninhabitable. We couldn't do it because the structure was not safe. So I could not move back into that building until the proper work was being done to kind of get that building stabilized. So I know that's an apartment building. I can't imagine a home that's not multiple stories, how the erosion for that is probably even worse. And I just think that's the problem. I think we need to get people out of the flood zone. I hate to have people who've been here for generations leave
mhm.
those homes and move out. But I just think if we're not going to take steps as a state, because I think it doesn't come from the village. We don't give dollars for this, but it doesn't come at that higher level to kind of get people to do things to kind of stabilize their home and to raise their home, which I know Leilani helped to kind of do when she was liaison to Flood Mitigation Committee. And I know I did a little bit of pieces of that, is getting somebody in to kind of teach our residents or help guide our residents to get their homes raised, get their, all their kind of electronics, like their boilers and all the things that their functions for their home raised up so they're above the line. So when it does flood, they're not losing everything and they may just lose basement space or maybe have some water in their living space. We need to figure out ways to kind of get those houses kind of retrofitted because they live in a flood prone area. And I just think that, the more people we can kind of get out of there, or the more people we can kind of get the dollars to do that, the better it would be. And I think our building for the affordable housing unit, a building would have been huge, because I said that's 31 people, that could be 31 families out of the flood zone. There's only so many homes down there where those landlords can say, you know what, maybe since they're out, maybe this is my time to kind of sell, get out, and then have the state do the right thing, which is buy that property and either tear it down, raise it and build something beautiful there, put a park down there. There's not even a lot of green space in the flats. And I think that's what I so desperately would want to happen down there, is have those homes kind of removed and get some green space so the water can flow, so it can be soaked up. We can't the goal isn't to get these people out and then have the same thing of having new people come right back in and they're in the same scenarios. It's to kind of get them
But
out. They made it a safer space and to open up the land so then we can be safer for everybody.
But the main point of all of this, you need people in office who are willing to
Mhm.
move that needle,
Yeah.
willing to spend the money, willing to actually do something. And I don't see it.
Yeah.
How compounded will this task be going forward now that there is a new administration? And that administration has vowed to punish cities that don't cooperate by withholding federal funds. Sanctuary
Yeah.
cities. I don't know if Mamaroneck I don't know if Mamaroneck is a sanctuary city or not, but again, it could be a situation where the new administration might say, you're not going to cooperate with us, therefore you are not going to get any more federal funds.
And I think. Mhm.
Oh, go ahead, man. You can answer.
No, I think that's a definitely a possibility. We saw it happen in 2016. We had an Army Corps plan fully funded, gone. 2016 to 2020, no funding ripped, that's gone. We're in a scenario now where we only have $88 million of the project. The price has gone up, and we're in a scenario again where that money can just be wiped away like that. We don't have the full funding. So that project could once again go away because of, the bureaucratic things of the state and the federal government and not really the villages piece. But that money could be gone away. And I just think that's the fear that I think a lot of people need to wake up and kind of realize, is that we could be in the same scenario we were in 8 years ago, where there is no Army Corps coming because there is no money to do it. And then we just sat around and argued for a year when we're advocating to say, hey, we have some money in our reserves. Let's do something and move some piece forward to help with flood mitigation. But we didn't, because we keep selling this. Well, not me personally, or Leilani or Lou. We keep selling this thought that the Army Corps is going to come in. We're talking to them and doing this. And I know a lot of it's slow. I do believe
Or
that
it's
they're
not
going to
even
do it.
about the Army Corps, Manny, but it was also about the we're applying for
Grants.
a grants. We're
Yep.
applying for these different grants. And I've seen so many grants for flooding come and go, and we never even received it. And I was like, how can we be a community that has applied for so many flood related grants and not have received it? We are a flood prone community.
Yeah.
What are we not submitting correctly to get these grants?
Yeah.
And that to me was a red flag.
No, I think that was definitely very challenging. We were like when we see that, and like I was very grateful because I think when we were leaving office, we were awarded a $6.6 million grant, which is
Yeah.
huge. I think that's great, and I was very grateful. But I just think our time in office, we saw a lot of grants, or not. I mean, we saw grants come and go. We saw them like we applied, didn't get it. It's like, well, what's going on? And I just think that's when I think when me and Leilani started to realize we're like we need to rip the Band-Aid off and start saying we're going to put money and just do a project or do a study because we need to. Our people are communicating to us that they want something done. We were willing to spend the dollars to do it. I don't want to sit around and wait because we sat around and wait for decades for an Army Corps plan that still hasn't come to fruition. I don't want to sit around for even more time because we're penny pinching for, oh, whose dollar are we going to spend? We have the dollars, let's do something. And I just think we were both very willing to do that. And the narrative was always the opposite of we only care about affordable housing. That's the only thing we wanted to do, which was not the case. Every meeting we talked about flooding. We had a flood update. We heard from upper electeds if they had any updates for us. I know I would check in with our village engineer. I know Leilani would check in with our village engineer. We cared about flooding and wanted to do something. We just had participants who were unwilling to understand that we just need to spend the dollars. And I just think that was just a very big challenge for us to kind of get over their hump because they wanted to focus so solely on the narrative of they only care about affordable housing. They're just trying to push this project through. That's the only thing that matters them, which wasn't the case. I think we juggled many things. I think for a long time, we weren't even talking about the affordable housing project at all. It wasn't on our agendas every single meeting. Flooding.
No, and actually the majority of the things that I even put on the agenda
Mhm.
in my 2 years had to deal with traffic.
Yep.
I, majority of anything that I put on the agenda was dealing with traffic and ensuring that our community was safe. We were people's questions were being answered, everything. And I was just like, but again, it's the narrative that you present. And if you go hard enough on multiple platforms about the same narrative, eventually people who do not do their own due diligence will believe that narrow scope of a narrative. And to come back to your point, Ken, about in terms of how social media played a point, when we first got elected, even a little prior to, I think it started when we won the primary, came in this little itty bitty community newsletter called The
Mhm.
Observer, who was the catalyst of producing false information. And especially and from a very narrow and a very white point of view. And I'm very specific about very narrow and very white point of view. And from there, they would take sound bites. They would do different things to get other people riled up about what they perceived
Mhm.
was the truth about what happened.
Exactly. And I think the
And
people
they
that
came, and majority of those people who are a part of the Observer are on the Democratic committee, the same Democratic committee that we said we weren't going to be endorsed by. So when people start doing the math leading up to what it is, you could see how the path was laid out for us
we
of
destabilized the power structure.
hardship, of
Exactly.
challenges,
Exactly. I think
of
we destabilized
litigation,
it.
litigation after litigation after litigation. I had about 2 to 3 ethics cases against me. One was trying to get my brother fired. They didn't find anything. The other one, I forgot. They had a problem with. They thought it was a conflict of interest of because I started before I was even ran for office. I started a support group for Black men in our community, and it was done out of Washingtonville Housing. And Washingtonville Housing is the preferred developer. So they thought that I was getting money from them just for developing an idea for Black men to have a space to share their thoughts, their feelings about the racism in our community, the struggles that they go through every single day. And all I did was set up the space. There was no money involved, but they made some picture up in their mind to say, let's put another ethics case out on her and then let's make it public news.
Did they finally publish the fact that we all know that you're a Black Panther? Did they tell everybody that? I mean, I feel your pain. I feel it, and I
Like,
feel your
it's so
passion.
frustrating, the stupidity, the level of
Ugh.
stupidity, ignorance, and also structural hate that people have because they feel that they're losing an ounce of power. And I'm like, you're not losing anything. You're not, as long as you're white in this country, you ain't really losing nothing.
Well, here's the thing. What gets me, Leilani, what gets me is it's like, look, I'm from New Rochelle. You know, talk about diversity. You know, it's a city made up of everybody, literally everybody. And what I love to point out to people, from when I was a little kid, I'm sure you know, you both having been trustees, having been, I'm thinking, I'm using the term trustee. Is that what that's the term,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay,
Correct.
because that's what we have in towns here in New Jersey where I am. That I remember as a kid in New Rochelle, we had council members in New Rochelle that all the beach clubs along like Davenport Neck and that area down by the water, just south of you all in Mamaroneck, that every winter you used to have literally cars full of people from Mexico and Central America would come up, literally 100 people, and work at the beach clubs.
Mhm.
And all the owners of the beach clubs had no problem paying $1 a day to all these hardworking individuals off the books. And there was no other way that all those beach clubs could get painted, get all set without paying these people illegal, under the table, cheap wages to work their butts off to get these beach clubs immaculate. So that come spring and summer, families can come and spend $10,000 to come and let their kids swim in the pool and play tennis and everything else. Okay. What ended up happening was those individuals who worked their butts off for $1 a day ended up staying. They ended up moving into New Rochelle. You talk to the people who, like with Mexican names, okay, down along US 1 in New Rochelle, you'll find out, oh, Grandpa used to come here and work at the beach clubs.
Mhm.
And Grandpa, it's the American dream. They worked their butts off. They eventually lived in the community, and then they eventually set up businesses. And so you have so many people who are in downtown New Rochelle now, whose grandpas were working their butts off for $1 a day. But I guess New Rochelle being a city and a little bit different, an urban structure, there was room for that to happen. Whereas it feels like in Mamaroneck, there are so many people reticent to allow people who are already in the community. We're not talking about let's import us some people of color. About folks are here already. Their kids need a place to live. And it just sounds so ridiculously close-minded that I'm sorry that you have encountered this. And it really it does not merit the kind of negativity and hate and closed-mindedness that I'm sure you guys you both have encountered. It's just wrong.
No, yeah.
The demographic was different between New Rochelle and Mamaroneck, because New Rochelle, to your point, has always had a greater pool of diversity than Mamaroneck has. You know, it was only, I would say, in the last 15, maybe 20 years that you've actually started to have other ethnic groups in Mamaroneck, which it just wasn't there years ago. I mean, there was segregation, absolute segregation. I grew up in Mamaroneck. I remember as a kid, my mother was a house cleaner, and my mother was a functional illiterate, so I had to read the ads to get jobs for her. And there were ads that were very, very specific, where they asked for, in Mamaroneck, they asked for a Caucasian or European housekeeper. I mean, this was very specific in the town of Mamaroneck. Now, it has evolved a lot. It has evolved tremendously, but they still have, I mean, what Leilani and Manny are talking about, there's still this remainder of that attitude of us and them. You don't see Blacks and Hispanics over in Shore Acres. You don't see Blacks and Hispanics up towards the upper end of Mamaroneck. They're concentrated in pockets. And those pockets, basically in Mamaroneck, have been kept that way for a reason. You know, there hasn't been the attention applied to them that should have been. And I think that this is what Leilani and Manny are talking about. Now, you know, the whole thing is, how do you, to break that seal of invisible bias is very, very difficult. You know, and Manny and Leilani tried that, you know, the whole thing is, the whole question is, what is going to happen in the future? You know, none of us are Houdini. So how, you know, how are we going to know? But there are headwinds coming. I mean, you've got a new administration, which is gonna, if you don't cooperate with ICE, then they're gonna take away federal funds. And if they take away federal funds, that's gonna compromise the growth of the village. So Lonnie, you wanna say something?
No, I will also say that it's not even just everything spills over everywhere. You know, you can't hide from truth. And one of the things that we heard time after time again, and probably hear it after this podcast, is that Mamaroneck is not racist, right? And it's not just affecting us as the adults in this community, but it also has been and is well documented. And the the state attorney general's office also has put out mandates on our school district, our Mamaroneck school district, because we have a few school districts in our community, in the village, but the Mamaroneck school district on racism in the school. So these things it's happening to our kids. It's been for decades happening to our kids. We just now have lawsuit. Just have lawsuits now. People have the gumption to, sue. And a group of people a group of parents truly advocated for the safety of their kids, and those are the people that we should actually be thanking at these points. You don't have to thank me, but there are advocates in your community really really trying to make a change, but it becomes hard. It becomes so hard when you have to deal with this opposition.
Mhm.
It's so hard because why would I want something to affect my family? Not just my household, like me and my husband, but like my brother. I have also a cousin that still lives here. I have family. Manny has family. They attacked his mom.
Mhm.
Why does any person have to endure this much because of your unwillingness to accept that our community has been racist, has benefited from systems of oppression, and that people are affected by it?
Well,
The fact that we can always gloss over it like it is not important, and I will also include individuals who also have been targeted with um people being anti-Semitic, or people who have been targeted because they are part of the LGBTQ community. When we refuse to acknowledge that we have these biases, these racist attacks, we are upholding systems of oppression, we will continue to have these things. I am sorry that I feel bad. I feel very upset that I've had to endure these things, but I also know that this is also a part of my journey in life.
as we move towards the end of the show, you guys did your part. Now it's time for somebody else to take up the mantle. And if the mantle isn't picked up, then it's going to be picked up by attrition along the way, because you can't go backwards. It's only going to go forward. And if people aren't willing to sit down at the table all together and come to some sort of resolve, it will just be done for them by virtue of circumstance.
Right. I mean, there's other things that possibly we would love to break down even more. But this is the first of like, I hope, of many conversations that we can have regarding our time and space in the village of Mamaroneck, and having to deal and navigate these waters, because only truth can be told. And this is where I believe that we are living and breathing in a space of truth that is being exposed. And the only way that we can sit there and move forward in life is if we acknowledge it and recreate and rebuild. Allow it to die and rebuild, because I am willing to let a lot of things die in order for it to be rebuilt.
You know,
Think, Leilani, and I'm sorry, I was going to say, I think also with each passing generation, yes, it's like moving at a snail's pace. But I think with each passing generation, the mindset modifies a little bit and opens up. And because the younger generation is not tainted already with whatever sins of the past their parents and grandparents had, and they could open up their eyes a little bit more and see for themselves, see what the realistic problems are,
Yeah.
and leave your prejudices behind and just say, okay, this is the way grandpa used to act and think, and this is the way mom used to act and think. But I live here now, and these are people who live in my community, and we have to start rethinking this. And I think that is what happens with each. Look at even just perfect example. Look at New Rochelle. When I was a kid, they didn't want to build buildings. Oh no, you don't want buildings. Now you go to New Rochelle. New Rochelle looks like Manhattan. I mean, because again, with each passing generation, people had more open eyes and realized, oh, this is the way it is. And now there's a whole industry of, young professionals living in downtown New Rochelle, when 30 years ago, anyone young got the hell out of New Rochelle. Nobody wanted to live in New Rochelle. Now you have thousands of young people coming to move into New Rochelle. But it took generations. And I can imagine you're seeing the big picture, as you've mentioned, and you have younger people who probably see that big picture, but older people who don't want anything about change. They want things exactly the way they are, and they just put up a wall and they don't want to hear it. So I can see that happening. But if
I
not
hope
for
it
you and
does.
Manny, well, if not for you and Manny to have put everything out there, no movement would have happened.
Mhm.
So you may not see the movement, but I'm sure that the movement it's in motion. It's just moving at this little slow snail's pace, but it's definitely going to be happening based on what you put out there.
Yeah, I
Get it
think you
done.
summed it up well. I think we have like I think we were very visionary in the way we were thinking, and I always knew coming in the seats like I'm not going to be able to I want to create the change that's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years. I can't think what's going to happen in 1 or 2 years. Like those are easy things to accomplish, but I just think I'm preparing our community for the future, and I just think a lot of people don't have that. And I think you're right. A lot of the older generation that's been here is we want it to be the small, friendly village that it's always been, and we want to be able to know everybody in our community and be able to run things of how they've been run for years. And it's like, no, we have to be able to move forward. We aren't the small friendly village anymore. Our population is growing. Many people want to join and kind of enter our community. We aren't that small place anymore. And I just think a lot of people, and I know it's very hard to accept, but I think that's one of the unique things about America is right on the water. We have a beautiful Harbor Island Park, and I just think people like that small, close knit, beautiful walkable downtown area of Mamaroneck Ave. But I think people, I understood that it's not always going to be like that. I mean, our country is not moving that way. The Village of America is not going to be the only unique place where the population stays at what it is, and you kind of get the same handful of generations living there. It's going to need to change. I think I always wanted to prepare us for that change, and I just think that's just who I am. I just think that's just how I entered the space thinking, because to me it's like change is not going to come if we wait for somebody else to do it. So it's like we are I wanted to be the one, be the person that could kind of make that change happen, and I tried my best to kind of bring those conversations forward. And I said this in our last board meeting. Um, we entered the space and we had conversations that boards weren't having at all. So
At all.
I just think that was always my goal. Even before I ran and I won, I said, even if I don't win, I just think me being a young person that can inspire the next young person to kind of think like, oh wow, if he can go and do it and get to the space or can run a campaign, why can't I do it? It wasn't about winning and doing that. Obviously, I would love to win. I'm very happy that I did win, but it's just about inspiring that next person and having the conversations. While they were difficult, I don't shy away from difficult conversations. I always tell people I'm more than happy to sit down, have a cup of coffee, talk to you. We can agree to disagree. It's okay. I think I'm okay with having those conversations. People didn't want to do that. They didn't take me up on it. I had a couple people who would do it, and they were like, "Wow, like you actually like the way you think. I can agree on some of the ideas you had." And I'd leave a conversation with that. But then I'd come on a Monday night for a board meeting, and they'd come and scream at me and tell me I'm all these terrible things. So it just didn't. I just think people only wanted to hear what they wanted to hear, and I think they wanted to fit the narrative of they can't do anything. We don't allow them to do anything because we destabilized the power structure of what was running the village for so many generations. That was it. The power structure of what was
That
happening
was it.
stabilized. We came in and we said, we're actually going to do something. We're going to have the tough conversations, and we're going to act on the word that we're saying to our community. that's what we came and said we're going to do. We try to do that. And once people saw like, wow, these people are actually serious and they're going to actually try to do that, it was really, really challenging for people to swallow that pill of, wow, they're actually going to do this work. So I
Well,
just think that's, that's what it was. The space was very, very challenging. I'm very grateful for it. I don't dislike that I was there and had it went through all those terrible moments. I just think it helped me grow as a person and realize, it helped me realize that I can advocate and push other things forward in a different way. I'm not saying I'm running away from the political space. I think I really enjoy being in that arena, and I look forward to kind of whatever that next step may be for me and about re-entering that arena, because I think I'm still a very young guy. I'm only 26 years old, and I just want to continue to advocate and continue to push that forward, because if it's not me or if it's not somebody else, who's going to do it? Who's going to have those conversations? We've seen time and time again, nobody's having them. So I just think if I'm in the arena and I have the knowledge and I can go and push, I want to be able to do that with everything that I have.
very well said, Manny and Leilani.
Yes.
And with that, we are going to close. I want to thank.
No, I was gonna say Manny's so much more politically correct than I am. Because he's very young, and like I've seen and I've been and I really do appreciate. I really want to say I really appreciate Manny and how much he has grown in this space and the things that he's going to do in the future. And of course, I appreciate Lou, because Lou was he was the fire.
Yeah.
And I try to keep us as grounded as possible, but I would never change this experience for nothing in the world,
Yeah. No, I
because it
wouldn't.
has allowed me to grow. It has allowed me to grieve, and it has allowed me to see myself beyond Mamaroneck, which I didn't have that foresight before. So I'm grateful.
Yeah.
You both nailed it. I mean, good for you. And you're going to be back on the show again to give us more insights about Mamaroneck. And with that, we're going to say adieu. And I want to thank my co-host, Ken Rosato. So good to be together with Ken again. And he's going to be a constant. I want to say I was about to say a constant co-host, but he would kill me. He's going to be a continuous contributor, because he's just he's a great anchor, and he has a lot of insightful things to say. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
for the audience
Thank you.
out there, stay tuned for more coming up. More good stuff, more topics, and just continue to be strong, everyone. We're all in this together.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I am going. Yeah.